Welcome to the Better Together podcast. I'm your host, Kyla, and today we have a bit of a heavier topic. I wanted to talk about grief, and I know I've talked about grief quite a bit on the podcast, but I wanted to talk about it again because grief did the thing it tends to do, where it creeps up on you at a random moment. So, yeah, I just wanted to talk about grief and how to be there for someone who you may know who's grieving. Um, and for those of you who don't know, I lost my dad and my brother very suddenly and traumatically at separate times in my life. My dad's 10-year death anniversary was in May, and my brother has been gone for 4 years now. So I've experienced quite a bit of loss for my age and in my life so far. So I kind of wanted to just talk about that, but also something happened this week that really brought up a lot of emotions that I wasn't expecting. One of my coworkers passed away this last weekend. They were diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer, I believe, less than a year ago. And for some reason, I didn't work with this person that much. I'm not going to share much about their story. It's not my story to share, nor do I know all the details of it. But for some reason, this death really hit me emotionally. And the day that I found out about it, I could not stop crying. Like, I cried uncontrollably. It was weird. I hadn't had an experience like that before. And I ended up calling my mom, and I was crying to her on the phone and just telling her how I was feeling. And she was the one who was kind of like, well, Kyla, maybe you are being re-triggered by this. And because I kind of explained to her that, this made me really sad. I didn't understand why it was making me really sad, but I can understand what this person's family is going through right now. And it's hard. This person was pretty young. And so it's hard to imagine, this person not being here anymore, and now their family has to deal with it, their partner, their kids. So it just hit me like a lot of bricks for some reason, because I know what that feels like, and I know that emotional, traumatic grief to my core, and it just really hit me. And so I kind of wanted to talk about what it's like, being the person to lose someone and receiving support, because sometimes the people around you who maybe haven't experienced a loss like this doesn't know how to help you in your grief, or how to be there for you in your grief. And I also want to preface this with saying that this isn't just death, grief. This is, breakups. This is someone who is really sick. This is literally anything that is affecting you very deeply emotionally, and I guess is traumatic in a way. But anything just affecting you very deeply and emotionally. Because even I think about it like when you cry to someone, I don't know about whoever is listening to this, but like I feel really awkward sometimes crying in front of people. It takes me a lot of warming up before I'm able to be that emotional with someone, unless it's like something in a situation sort of like this where I am just like uncontrollably crying and emotions are just coming up in a way that I am not necessarily expecting. So this has been on my mind lately, just the thought of, how do you show up for someone who is grieving? How do you support them in their time of need? How do you allow them to cry? What do you say? This is something I feel like a lot of people don't know how to react to. It can be really awkward and weird, and you don't want to overstep, but you don't want to like not show your support. And I understand this feeling too, because I've also had those same feelings, as well as I'm sure most people have had, uh, responding to someone who is in an emotional time of need, whether it is grief, whether it is just someone who is, not feeling good that day, or a situation affected them in a way that they don't feel good. Someone who is dealing with depression or anxiety, or again, someone who's sick, or whatever it may be. So I wanted to hit on some of those points of how do you handle that? And I'm going to be speaking very specifically about my experience, because I've only had my experiences. I'm not a professional, so I'm going to be talking about the loss of, or the feelings surrounding the loss of my dad and brother. I'm not going to be talking particularly about their stories, but just, the grief that surrounds that. People say, something people say often when you lose someone is, oh, I'm so sorry. It will get better soon, or it will be okay. And it goes on and on and on. And the thing is, it's really nice to hear that, of course. I'm not saying that's the wrong thing to say, but in a situation, at least in my situation, going through my loss, you are one day this person, and the next day, after you've gone through this traumatic experience, you're no longer that person you were the day before. You There's the you before, and then there's the you after whatever the event is. Um, and I know I've said this plenty of times on my podcast, but it's so true. I felt like a very different person. I felt very alone. Very It's an isolating experience to lose someone traumatically, to lose someone, period, because watch as life moves forward without this person. And it's weird seeing people living their normal lives when life doesn't feel normal for you anymore. So like, how do you handle that? And how do you get support from the people around you? The thing about loss too is that no one knows how to react, whether you're the person who lost someone or going through the experience, or you're the person on the other side supporting whoever is grieving. And it's weird because you don't know, again, as the person experiencing the grief, you don't know exactly what you need. And everybody grieves so differently. Some people, need space. Some people want other, like, to be surrounded by their community. Some people are angry. Some people, you know, can't even think about it and have to push it away. Everybody has their own reactions to it. So it's hard to understand and act and do for the person you love. And I say all these things because I want to validate that and not make it seem like it's not okay not to know. Because, of course, someone who hasn't been through certain traumatic experiences is just not going to be able to understand to the depth of, or what the depth of that loss feels like. When I experienced the loss of my dad and brother, there were people reaching out to me left and right. And I really appreciated that. It was, for me, very cathartic and very needed in a lot of ways. I think something that I experienced through both losses is that people check in when it first happens. And then after, a month that goes by, people stop checking in. And that's what I mean when I say, you watch life go by, but it feels like everything has just ended in your own life because the person you love is no longer there. Yeah, I don't know. It can just be a very hard experience seeing people like live their normal life and stop reaching out because what's going on in their life has, they haven't been affected in the way that you have. So it can be difficult. And sometimes the person who's trying to be there for you is just doing the best. They don't know any other way. Like I said, you don't know until you have faced something like this. And even if you have, it can still be hard to figure out a way to support that person. So here is my advice on being there for someone who's dealing with grief. Number one, check on them and check on them consistently. Even if you think you're being annoying, unless you're told otherwise, be annoying. Feeling alone and that isolating feeling during a loss is so common, and it feels good to have people reaching out to you, even if it's people you haven't heard from in years. So continue that and keep it consistent. Another thing is ask questions. You know, you can ask questions about the person who passed away. You can ask questions about how that person who lost that loved one or is going through whatever they're going through, how are they doing? What are they doing every day? What do they need from you? You can ask those questions. The one thing I would say not to ask is how someone died. That can be a very re-triggering, re-traumatizing experience to talk about in a casual way. I know for me, it's hard to I've opened up a lot about, how my brother and dad passed away. But I will say, like, talking about it is something I have to prepare to do. And, like, even in therapy, like, talking about how it actually went down in both situations is still very hard for me to talk about, even this amount of years later. And it's still something I'm working on in therapy. That's the other thing, too, is when someone says to you, "Oh, it will get better." It doesn't really get better. You just learn to live and navigate around this new way of life without this person. Listen and listen very deeply. Sometimes it can be more helpful just to listen rather than giving your own advice. Just having someone there next to you to be able to share your thoughts and your feelings about this and to cry to is just as cathartic as getting advice from a therapist, to be honest. And like, better to not even get the advice. Just let me like share everything I'm feeling in that moment and let it out. Validate what that person is saying. And what I mean by validating what that person is saying is saying it's okay to let your feelings out. It's okay to feel the way you do. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to not know how to feel. It's okay to not know how to react. Validate those person's feelings because eh, again, it's just such, I keep using the word isolating, but it's such an isolating feeling going through loss that deeply. If you're close enough with the person, hold them. Um, Let them cry. Tell them that they don't need to be strong and that it's okay to let all their feelings out. And in fact, it's necessary to let all those feelings out, no matter in what way they come. And the biggest thing to me is being consistent and a dependable person, especially as time moves forward. Like I said, death dates, birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, they're all difficult without that person. So, you know, taking the time to reach out to your friend or loved one about that and just acknowledging that person's presence and that they are missed and that they are not with you on this date is a big thing. Another thing is, well, that's the biggest thing in my opinion, but also contributions, whether there is a charity you can support, or even if it's just writing someone a card, or even planting something in honor of that person, like a tree or something, because it's a symbol of rebirth. you know. And from the advice of my mom, when there is simply nothing you can do, just hold space for that person. This means holding them in your heart, holding them in your thoughts, and holding them in your prayers. And that's what I'm going to do for this coworker who lost their life. I'm going to hold their family and them in my heart and pray for them because that's all I can do right now. We as humans don't have a lot of control, unfortunately, over things that happen, and that's very hard to come to terms with. But I would be curious, what you guys think of this topic, whether you're on the side of grieving, what has helped you? What do the people do around you that love you that has helped you? What are things that haven't been helpful? If you're someone who is trying to be there for someone, how do you help them? Is it what is it like to not understand that pain and want to be there for someone? I'm curious about these things. I hope that you guys found this topic somewhat interesting. As always, thank you so much for listening. Remember to rate, comment, subscribe. Follow me on my Instagram page, which is Kyla_Milliberger. Follow me on my podcast Instagram, which is the_better together_podcast. And write in your questions, stories, comments, concerns, whatever it may be at thebettertogetherpod@gmail.com. And I will see you next Sunday. Bye.